It's been almost 6 decades and the jets are still in service.
I remember 1965. We had the Mystiers, we had the Hunters and the Nats. And we were faced with F-85 Sabres, and the Pakistanis had just got their F-104 Starfighters. Starfighters was a Hawa. If the Starfighter came, others would vanish. But the first Starfighter and the only Starfighter shot down in 1965 was by a Mystier, unevenly matched. I would try and remember the name. Squadron leader Devaya, Devaya. He was a hero. And now some people think the MiG-21, because it has often been called the flying coffin. Why was it fielded against the F-16 a couple of days ago? I want to remove this fallacy. MiG-21s are, of course, old. The first one, as you said, came in 1963, and it is of the 50s design. But every fighter has an airframe of a certain life. If that life is crossed and not upgraded, it is discarded. So no MiG-21, which is not worthy of being in the air, is being flown. The MiG-21 Bison, which has been fielded, the first MiG-21 BIS came in 1980. And the first MiG-21 Bison, that is the upgraded BIS, was upgraded in 1998-99 in Russia. And then HAL started upgrading. The first one was upgraded in 2001. And as you said, the last one in 2006 or 7. 200 such planes have been out of the overall 800 to 900. These 200 BIS have been upgraded to Bison. This Bison is a formidable aircraft. It is a match to the F-16, only slightly inferior to the F-16. And if an F-16 pilot is not capable and well trained, then he is inferior to a pilot who has been flying a MiG-21 Bison, because MiG-21 is not flown by any ordinary pilot. It requires much greater skill than probably an F-16. Now remember, what has it got new? Everybody in their mind has got 50s aircraft, came in the in 1963. What has it got? Start from the canopy. It's got a new canopy, a GPS, which was quite normal. It has got a head-up display. The pilot has a helmet-mounted queuable sight, which actually means the aircraft is going in this direction, the target is this side, and just by looking at the target, he can aim the missile and target it. The missile will go towards that side. He doesn't have to turn the aircraft. It has got HOTAS, H-O-T-A-S, hands-on throttle, which is on the left, and the stick. Now, many of the controls are on the throttle, many of the weapon controls are on the stick. He doesn't have to move his hands around. He's got a head-up display, he's got a helmet sight, he's looking in front, he's with all his 5 fingers on the left and 5 fingers on the right, he's controlling the whole aircraft. That is one of the biggest modernizations done, this combination of 3 head-up display, helmet and the HOTAS.
Now that's what the Bison has.
The Bison, I'm talking about Bison, yes. And then of course it has the radar warning receiver, it has an autopilot, it has a, many other features it has got.
And in terms of weaponry as well, it has got a lot of, advanced weaponry.
Yes. I'll request the Air Marshal to talk about the weaponry, but more important is that F-16 also has similar things. And when it comes to weaponry, I will not go to the specific, but all I will say is that maybe F-16 has got a little longer range missiles to carry and fire.
Okay.
But similar missiles are available in the MiG-21.
Okay.
And the last thing is, people talk about the passive and the active scanned array radar. Both have got similar, they don't have the array radar, both have got similar Doppler radars. So they are evenly matched. And but superior tactics is required to defeat each other.
How long do you think MiGs will be able to go ahead and serve us as well?
So the first fallacy again I want to remove is because we are considering getting the F-16 for our next lot of medium multi-role combat aircraft.
So MMCA 2.0.
And before anybody gets a wrong idea that why are we going to consider even getting F-16 when, against a MiG-21 it has been shot down. Let me tell you, as the Air Marshal has said, Pakistan acquired the F-16A, a single-seater fighter, 1980s. The B is a twin-seater used for training. So basically the A, which is, you can say, the basic F-16 aircraft. And the Americans have been offering Block 70 or F-16IN and then Block 70, and now they say we will customize an F-16 called the F-21 for manufacture in India.
Something which was announced in the Aero India show as well.
They're two completely different aircraft. So this FA or B, the Pakistanis till now, rather in service, they were about 45 of them. They had acquired 14 more from Turkey. And then, this phase of Indo-Pak relations deteriorated and some aid was stopped, particularly military aid, and they were going to get FC-16, Charlie and Delta. Perhaps 3 were delivered and any more were not delivered. But the Pakistanis got the F-16A upgraded to Block 50/52 as they call it, from the Turks, not by the Americans. The Turks upgraded it. They are still supplying a lot of defense equipment to Pakistan. But even at the Block 50 or 52 level, these 14-15 aircraft which have been upgraded, they are not as good as the F-16 of today, the latest version. So they are still vulnerable. It has its good qualities and bad qualities. 2 main qualities which compare with the MiG-21. One is the afterburner thrust. There is a normal thrust, and when you use afterburners to gather speed in close combat, that is a different thing. It uses 8 to 10 times more fuel for a short duration, and it gives it much more agility and maneuverability. In that, it is slightly better. And I am told that it can withstand, pilots can withstand 9G of turning, which is useful in close combat and dogfights. Whereas MiG-21 can withstand 7 if the pilot is well trained. Again, it calls for good training. So, in 2 aspects it is better, otherwise it is matched. So MiG-21s have a long way to go. Perhaps when the MiG-21s which were delivered in 2006 would probably have 20 years to go in them. So we are going to see MiG-21s until we get the next lot of our Tejas and other MMRCAs. So we have nothing to worry. The only worry is that our squadron strength at the moment is low. Acquisition must be fast forwarded.
A quick concluding comments from you, General.
See, this is Russian equipment. Soviet and Russian equipment were made for mass production, and they were cheap. You can buy 5 MiGs for 1 Western fighter. Upgrade is the order of the day world over. You must get most juice out of this equipment by spending a little more money, because new equipment costs too much and it meets the requirement. At the same time, you can start getting newer aircraft. And remember, the Russians are also getting used to the market conditions. They are offering the MiG-35 on the same terms as Western countries are now offering, with serviceability guarantee through various means, like others are offering. So we are going to have the MiG-21 Bison for quite some time to come until we get newer planes.
Your memories, and also how would you look at the MiG-27's 3-decade-long journey with the Indian Air Force?
I was lucky that I was a brigade major in Rajasthan, the brigade which looked after the Longewala area in 1985-86. And this aircraft had just come in and it was based at Jodhpur. And I remember one day driving from Longewala towards Jodhpur in a jeep, and I heard such a thunderous sound as if the earth was splitting. There was a MiG-27 flying at 100 feet above my head from behind me, And when that happens, it is unexpected. You don't know this is an aircraft, much lesser a MiG-27, which I had not seen before, and making such a noise, and which later I learned from MiG-27 pilots. They themselves, when they are flying fast at lower speeds, this aircraft was known to be the fastest aircraft at that time. And the airframe used to shudder. And they themselves thought, but it kept steady and it kept its hold. And imagine somebody going on the road, nothing is visible in the sense that it is a deserted road in the deserts, and such a roar starts off and suddenly goes above your head. You are quite shaken. You know, he doesn't have to fire a rocket to shake up the enemy, as to say. So thereafter, I had number of interactions with them. They came in support of land forces during exercises with my brigade. And I learned they called it the fast and furious fighter. For its age and time, that is the analog age, this was a wonderful aircraft, very powerful. And it had sweep wings, variable geometry sweep wings, which means at 0 degree, the wings were here. At 16 degrees for takeoff and low-level flying, they would sweep back 16 degrees, 45 degrees for combat, because it increases its speed, and 72 degrees going back, almost like becoming a missile for high altitude and fast getaway. This was unique about this aircraft. But remember, at that time, it did not have satellite navigation or GPS. The pilots had a lot of workload to do. They were fatigued. And when you asked them, would you like to have air-to-air refueling in this aircraft? And they said no, because flying this jet is quite fatiguing. Even at the end of 45 minutes or 1 hour of flying, their behinds are aching.
Okay.
So they were not in favor of that, because outside the cockpit and inside the cockpit, they had a lot of monitoring to do. They had to do navigation, they had to look at the maps, they had to look at all the controls. So nowadays, they didn't have head-up display. It came later with some of the upgraded aircraft. The other thing you can remember about this aircraft is that it had 9 hard points.
Okay.
2 of them were for drop tanks. They were often seen flying with drop tanks because of the distances from Jodhpur. And the remainder 7 hard points, they could carry 4,000 tons of armament, bombs or rockets or pods. And if they were not carrying their full load, they could carry what the pilots call the Gasha Gatling gun, 6-barrel gun. It could carry only 240 rounds, although its rate of fire was 5,000 rounds a minute. If you press the trigger too long, in a few seconds, all 240 rounds would be fired. So, but you can also remember this aircraft for the number of accidents it had, for the low serviceability. It was 60 to 70% later on, and for a couple of controversies which came up later, we can discuss.
Being dependent on a particular kind of aircraft or on a particular country, we're now slowly moving towards the indigenous aspect, and from 2.5 generation to the 5th generation aircrafts now.
Yeah, that is why when the MiG-27 was in service, a need was felt to upgrade it. Now, when I was talking about controversies, these were the 2 controversies which came up because of the Comptroller and Auditor General's report in 2008. First, he talked about the upgrade plan itself. You know, that upgrade plan was sanctioned in 1999. For then, there were 133 aircraft. They were to be upgraded at a cost of 921 crore rupees. But by 2008, when this report was laid before Parliament, it said only 20 aircraft have been upgraded, and out of that, only 10 have been accepted by the Air Force. This was 2008. And the Russians had said that we will discontinue support for this aircraft and the engine by 2012. So there were four years left, and there was so much delay in the upgrade. The upgrade was to improve the strike capability and the night fighting capability of this aircraft. So the Air Force had to drop some of the plans, because it was of no use when only 4 years are left. It had not been decided when to phase it out. But in view of the Russian declaration that they would end the support, it didn't make sense to continue. So only some of the aircraft were, thankfully, they were upgraded because it came in use later.
Okay.
And then second time when the controversy arose was in 2014, when again the CAG reported that an EW system for this aircraft called Takshak in a joint venture with Israel, again sanctioned in 2009, but by 2014 it had not seen the light of day, in the sense it had not successfully been completed.
Okay.
And that time the phase out date had been announced for 2016. It's another matter that again it has taken almost 3 to 4 years to phase it out. So it did not make sense to have spent and foreclosed the project. A 311 crore project for EW systems, out of which 155 crore rupees had been spent, was foreclosed, and that was a loss of money.
Okay.
So these were the controversies, but you know, again, for its time and for its era, as I said earlier, this was a wonderful aircraft with a few engine problems and excellent airframe, although there were problems with the airframe also, as pointed out by the CAG.
How would you like to remember MiG-27 in few words, if both of you, starting with General Ra?
Well, from the pilots who flew the MiG-27, I've learned it was a wonderful aircraft. They've lived their life with it, and now they've given way to much modern aircraft. With the last squadron of the MiG-27 being phased out, we are down to 28 squadrons, including the one Tejas squadron. And the silver lining is that another Tejas squadron will be inducted. We will have probably 2 more squadrons of Su-30MKI, which we are negotiating. We will have 2 squadrons of MiG-29 as well. And with all the inductions due, we will be back to 34 squadrons. And with the 114 fighter aircraft tender, which will now play its role, let's see which aircraft comes in, whether it's Su-35 or Hornet or F-21 or Gripen or Typhoon. These old must give way to the new.
If you look at its role specifically in the Indian Air Force and the way the journey has been from 2002, when India received the first Su-30MKI from a Russian defense company, Sukhoi.
Yeah. See, the Sukhoi 30MKI was bought even when it was on the design stage. We have always depended on Russia for our fighter requirements, because we have not been able to develop a fighter of our own. This is not a light combat aircraft. This is a heavy combat aircraft. And in that class, we were not able to get a similar fighter at the cost required, in the numbers required, and to be assembled and manufactured in India. So we went in for the Sukhoi 30MKI, which is a twin-seater and a twin-engine aircraft. When all our fighters have been single-seater and single-engine, except the MiG-29 and the Su-30MKI. Jaguar also. And of course, each aircraft has a 2-seater version for training purposes, but this is for an operational purpose. And let me also dwell on this twin-seater. There always been a debate whether to have single-seater or twin-seater. There's always been a debate whether to have single engine or double engine. Now, if you find, you will find most of the modern fighter jets, they are twin-seater as well as single-seater. So what governs? It's the philosophy. The F-15 and the F-16 in the US Air Force are single-seater, but in the Israeli Air Force they are twin-seaters. The F-35 being developed as the 5th generation fighter is a single-seater. But what really makes the difference is your philosophy. In your philosophy, if you think a second pilot is more important for distribution of responsibilities, say for example, second pilot is considered as 2 additional eyes in the cockpit. If one pilot is incapacitated, the second one can recover the aircraft. If the rear pilot can look after the radar and the ground threats, the first pilot can look after the air threats. And similarly, there are problems between if you have a two-seater fighter, mainly of coordination, mainly of training, mainly of the penalty that you have to pay for having an extra seat means higher weight, lesser endurance, more fuel required. And very importantly, there is not enough time in modern combat for the two pilots to exchange notes or to have a conversation. And some pilots tell me that the pilot in front who is doing the actual flying, what is going on in his mind, the second pilot is not aware, and there have been accidents in the sense the first pilot may turn the aircraft sharply, inviting higher G forces, and the rear pilot has actually broken his neck as a result because he could not anticipate what the first pilot is going to do.
Okay.
So these two things dictate which philosophy is in force in which Air Force. And even now in the American Air Force, there is a thinking that they must have a F-22 Raptor and a F-35 as two-seater rather than a one-seater.
Okay.
Similarly, the argument goes for twin engines also. When you require higher thrust, higher endurance, higher speed, it dictates that you have a twin engine aircraft. But twin engine also means, the
weight of the aircraft will increase.
More management problems, the pilot workload increases, he has to monitor both engines. It means, more the cost of acquisition, servicing, overhauls, inventory, and so forth. But still, the Indian Air Force has decided on the Su-30MKI. The reasons have not been put in the public domain why they went in for a two-seater or a twin engine.
Okay.
But we still support what the Russians have been developing as the fifth generation fighter as a double-seater twin engine aircraft.
On the aspect of this, combination, the combo of Rafale and Su-30MKI, a lot has been said. In fact, the Vice Chief of the Air Force also said that this will be a very potent combination.
That's because when you compare the Su-30MKI and the Rafale on our side with what the adversaries have, the Chinese have the J-10 and the J-20. The J-10 is in largest numbers in the PLA Air Force. So when you compare, J-10 is no comparison with these two aircraft because J-10 is actually modeled on stolen designs and software and avionics of the Israeli Levy and the F-16 Viper kind of design. The J-20 is a multi-role, all-weather stealth aircraft, but they claim it to be a stealth aircraft. Ours is not a stealth aircraft, but our air chief has nixed those, the thinking that, or the claim from the Chinese that J-20 is a stealth aircraft. He declared openly, we tracked the J-20 flying over Tibet all the time. So when you compare these aircraft, the J-20 is also not superior to the Su-30MKI, and the Rafale is just coming is a notch further or better than all these aircraft. Why? Because the Su-30MKI, as the Russians made it, has been improved by us with, say, the French head-up display, the Israeli electronic warfare suite, the targeting pod. Now we have the better AESA radar. Earlier it was passive. We have better maximum takeoff weight, more number of .12 points on the Sukhoi as compared to 8 on the J-20. The range of the Sukhoi is better. 1200 of the J-20 versus 2000 of the Sukhoi. And with in-flight refueling, it increases to 8000. So all these features make Su-30MKI itself so much better than the J-20. We don't even have to have the combo of the Rafale to say that both these in combination will beat our enemy.
But then we are going to have that combo soon.
Yes, we will be able to have that combo. Only thing I would say is just the combo is not enough. You do require numbers because you have the threat of a two-front war and assets then get divided. And it is the management of the two fronts which will come into play, which is only possible with better numbers.
General Lodha, final words from you.
Yeah. See, we have number of types and various classes of fighters. I think we should restrict ourselves to the Sukhoi 30 MKI, the Rafale, and the LCA, but produce them in larger numbers in a quicker time frame if we have to meet our strategic and operational requirements. So there is a need for a production line, not one, multiple production lines. Whether we produce them by assembling them in India or producing them in India, that should be decided by the operational requirement rather than any other factor.